Welcome to Confessions of a Cyberpsychologist. Today I am chatting with Auxane Boch about video games, social robotics, AI, and immersive reality. Auxane is a doctoral candidate in interactional technology ethics at the Technical University of Munich, otherwise known as TUM, which translates as being a researcher in video games, immersive realities, social robotics, and AI ethics from a psychology perspective. She is also a Friedrich Scheidel Fellow at the TUM think tank, where she also co-leads the Immersive Realities Working Group. And she is still for a few weeks the Woman in AI Munich City Lead, moving to a position of Woman in AI Germany Research Officer. Welcome, Auxane. I'm so delighted to have you on board.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Auxane, before we get chatting about the work you do and the research you've done, can you tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and what the pivot point was that sent you down the road of cyberpsychology?
Sure. So first, who I am, that's a very good question, very deep question as well, but we're going to keep it a bit superficial. You said already all my academic stuff, right? So when I'm not an academic, what I can say is that I'm French, so sorry for my English if it gets weird. Did a bunch of stuff, fun stuff, also not being an academic. For instance, I was a tour guide for a while at the Teeling Distillery in Dublin when I was doing my master's there. So I tried to keep a lot of different hobbies and exciting topics. I love video games. I love robots, made it my job. So can't be unhappy about that. And what sent me down the road of cyberpsych is a bit linked to that, right? So I've always loved everything a bit fictional. Grew up with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all those things. Love the fantasy words, love playing with friends as well. And yeah, stumbled into video games quite early because my parents were cool enough that we had games adapted to our age growing up. And I don't know, I remember really wanting to study psychology at some point when I was around 20 years old, 19 years old. And so I went for it. And then I was talking to friends who were engineers, one in particular I'm thinking of. And back then we had this game in France that just came out, Life is Strange. It became a big hit after that. And it comes from a French studio, so very proud, of course, the French being very proud of their game studios. Um, and it was talking about a lot of different, very heavy points in life of teenagers and young adults and climate change. And we were thinking, wow, playing this game actually, I mean, I was doing my studies in the mountains, in the French mountains, so we were already very aware of climate change because that's where you see the mountains melt. But playing that game, really, we were thinking, wow, this is giving another perspective. This is really working with the environment and stuff. And with okay, games can change people's perspective, right? Games can make the world better if we use them the right way. And this is like a very mainstream game. A lot of people play it. So you don't even need to create a very specific game. You can just use the ones that exist. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to do that. This needs to be the thing I do. And looked up masters. And in Dublin, there was this crazy masters. I had never been to Ireland before. But I come from a very diverse family. So I've traveled a lot growing up. And we thought, okay, I'm going to apply. They sent me an email. They said, you're in. And 2 weeks later, I was in Dublin doing my first class. So, and now I speak English. Woo, French person that speaks English. You can ask my colleagues from back then that wasn't a given when I arrived. But yeah.
You speak five languages, don't you? French, German, Spanish, Greek, and English.
So I speak fluently to this level only two, right? I speak very well French and English. I like to think I speak very well English. And then I speak German enough for someone that lives in Germany, right? So I have conversations in German. And then I have the taxi driver level of Greek and Spanish. That's how I call it. It's like, I'm gonna figure it out. We're gonna communicate. We can even have a conversation, but it's going to be keywords and intonations and stuff, right? So yeah,
That's still very impressive.
thank you.
I
I,
guess that's part of being Western European, isn't it? You just kind of you speak lots of languages because that's what you do.
yeah, and I mean, I grew up in a very specific background, so my parents are very mixed. We have only a little bit of French blood. My grandparents are all from different places, and so we grew up traveling to Germany and Greece a lot, a bit to Canada, a bit to Italy. And so in my home, we speak only French as the main language, but with our family, we always spoke a bunch of different languages. And I think that definitely is a big part of it. And my nanny was Spanish. So that's why I speak Spanish a little bit. So it's, just a mix, a mix of family stuff and traveling. Yeah.
That's very impressive. We're going to be covering a lot of topics in this podcast, but I
Yes.
want to start with your master's research, and I'm assuming this is the one that you did in Ireland. Um,
Yes.
and you began this research journey focusing on video games and how they can be used for social education. What was the aim of this research, and what were the top line learnings from this master's research?
So the aim of the research is that, how can I say that? So I played the game Detroit Become Human. It had just come out when I was doing my master's. And I thought this is the perfect game to make people change their mind about AI and about new tech. It's a great game. You embody an android, or three different androids actually, and then you follow narrative stories that engage you very much emotionally and that make you reflect on your interaction with tech in general and your relationship to tech. And at the same time, I was building my master's thesis study methodology, and I was thinking, okay, we need to go down that path. And I talked to my potential supervisor, Dean McDonnell, um, and Dean is still to this day the guy that I can call and say, hey, I have an idea, and he will be super excited about it. So he got super excited about it because Dean is Dean. Um, and I was like, okay, so cool. So we're going to go down that path and we're going to try to see if we can make people change their perception of technology through playing this video game that makes you embody a technology. So the main idea was cognitive empathy for your avatar is going to help you learn about the group your avatar belongs to, and it's going to make you have a different perception of this group. And there was a bunch of research on that before as well, right? With Black populations or being, how do you say, immigration officer and kind of building empathy for different perspectives. And so we did that, and it was only 35 participants in the first study, so in the master's research. So I cannot say that statistically the power was super high, but what we saw is a big effect with a very small group. And this was still a diverse enough group. And I remember one of my classmates who told me, I think a few months after we finished this research, he took part in the experiment. He was working on the everyday with AI, and he told me this changed my relationship to AI. So playing this game with you made me change my way of interacting with tech. I was like, bro, this is anecdotal, but this is something. And this aligns with the study data we have. And so we reproduced this study though. And I can tell you that there is still some cool effects. We're finishing up the paper and we're gonna send it out for publication, hopefully. Yeah. So
Oh,
what we learned is that games can do what we thought games can do.
yeah, and that is an incredible finding and just such a amazing, even though it's anecdotal, such an amazing way to see the positive side of gaming. And then a number of people, especially parents, focus more on the negative side rather than the
Yes.
positive side of gaming. And it seems that online games are viewed in a way as being socially isolating individuals from their families and their communities, rather than as a means of socially integrating them. Um, what is your take on that in terms of games being isolating versus integrating?
That's a very good question. Um, so the thing is that it depends so much. It's like if I was telling you that having an Instagram account would be isolating or not, or having a new book that you really wanted to read can be isolating or not. The problem is not the tech, it's the way we use it. I would have I could make a strong case to say that online games are actually everything but isolating, or I could make a case. I don't think it would be as strong, but I'm sure I could make a case and find data that say the opposite. So it's really about the context of use and why do you play those games? There's some super cool research on well-being and needs fulfillment, social needs fulfillment as well with online games and how actually we can find communities through games. This is, if you see the internet as a space, then you kind of remove this view that if you're talking with people online, then you're not actually talking to people. No, you are talking to people. It's just that they're online. So it's another type of socialization. And for kids, I mean, it always comes down to parents understanding a bit better what their kids are going through. So I had this question a while back in an event we were doing with people from industry. So non-researcher people. Um, and they started asking these questions, and one of them became kind of came down very human and said, I'm a dad and I'm worried because my kid is 7 years old and now wants to start playing on Fortnite and wants to start playing on Minecraft with their friends. And I'm afraid that they're just going to remove themselves from our family life and kind of cut those ties a bit early. They're not a teenage yet. I was like, okay, a lot of conceptions in there. I can see a lot of beliefs in the way you interact with your kid. Um, and I think we all agreed to say, okay, first rule, figure out why your kids wants to, and then do it with them. Learn what they're gaining out of it, right? And then do it the right way means knowing how to do it yourself as a parent. So I wouldn't say it's isolating, just to come back to your question. I would say it depends how you use it. If you let your kid get lost in there, of course, it's super interactive. It's like hanging out with friends all the time. I mean, when I was that age, I would want to do that as well. It just wasn't on the screen because we didn't have the option. But when Emerson was up, I was like, what, 10 years old? And I did spend a stupid amount of time on there. And it was just about the friends. It wasn't about anything else.
That's very good advice, and it's for parents to play the game with their child. Because I think also gives them a context of the game, it gives them stories and things to talk about and something to relate back to.
Definitely. It's
So
like if you go play soccer with your kid, why don't you go play Fortnite with your kid? You want to share dancing with your kid, then share Minecraft with your kid?
yeah, exactly. It's about building those relationships and having something in common with them rather than just letting them go off. It's almost like saying, well, you go off to the playground and come back later. And I've got nothing, I don't even know who your friends are on the swings and on the jungle gym. So I've got nothing to
Yeah.
engage with you on. You will, as a parent, go to a physical place where your child is playing. So you should be going to the online place where your child is playing.
Yeah, and you know how to use the tools that are in the playground as well, right? So you're able to tell your kids, no, it's not head first on that slide. So it's a bit the same, in principle, it would be quite similar,
Yeah. And
especially before 12 years old, I would say. It's just keep an eye, make sure that everything's fine, and learn as well, and enjoy it as well. Don't make it a chore, right? A
yeah,
chore. Chore.
true.
A chore.
Oh, it's not just me struggling a little bit with pronunciation. It's okay. Thinking about adults and gaming, I've heard stories from a few HR people about a growing concern with those who spend a kind of a lot of the nights gaming, and arrive at work tired and kind of unengaged with their job. Do you think that late night gaming is an issue or just an alternative form of kind of after work entertainment, similar to, say, going out clubbing or socializing after work and not getting enough sleep and coming into work the next day tired?
Exactly. It's a coping mechanism. It's escapism. It's enjoyment. Escapism doesn't have to be bad, by the way. I know we use it mostly in the bad way, but it can be very positive as well. When you take a good book, you're escaping as well. So it's it happens to all of us. I mean, those TV shows, right? Who didn't just binge just that last episode, right? So it's a
I
similar
think
thing.
it's like binging last 6 episodes.
There you go.
I know it's 2 in the morning, but I just want one more, just one more.
Just one more. I just need to know what happens next. Just one more.
And we don't kind of pathologize binge
No.
watching as much, but we kind of do pathologize gaming because it has this um almost like an aura to it that is bad, and you shouldn't be doing that. It's one thing versus something else.
Exactly. And I think we pathologize a lot of things that just don't fit exactly with what we think are our society's values. And I mean, women started reading at some point, and that was a problem. You know what I mean? Like we can go back to a lot of things like that. That's if you read the book The New Breed, I'm sorry, no, I'm supposed to recommend some at some point. I will recommend it as well, but it's written by Kate Darling, and she's a researcher at MIT Media Lab. And she writes it about robots, but she has an entire thing where she explains exactly all of that, like in time, a bunch of different things that happened that everyone was more panicking about. And then today, this is the most normal thing ever.
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of thing. It's like gaming seemed to be such a big revolution and so different, and it had to be a problem. But actually, guess what? Most research say it's not. It's another tool. The same way, I mean, how many times did I stay up very late because of a book? Right?
Yeah.
The same.
The amount of times I've read through the night and 6 o'clock in the morning going, oh flip, I've got to go I have to go to work. Oh no.
Exactly. And you're
That
like,
was
ooh.
such a good book.
I mean, we had Harry Potter, we had
Yeah.
Twilight series when we were younger. Like in my generation, we had those things where you were waiting for the book to come out at midnight in front of the store. I never did that, but I have a bunch of friends who did.
Yeah,
And those people would just not sleep for 2 days. The moment they had the book, they had to finish it, you know?
exactly. Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just said to my husband, don't talk to me for 2 days because this is me. I'm gone.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Here you go. So yeah,
Yeah.
game is the same. It's just one thing. It's the same as a book or a TV show or even just hang if it's an online game, hanging out with friends. I mean,
Yeah.
when I have friends staying over, even though we're working in the morning, there is a world in which at 2 a.m. we're still up drinking a glass of wine on the balcony, chit-chatting about stuff, you know?
Yeah. Life.
Yeah.
It's about things. Exactly. Moving on to your doctoral research, which is about interactional systems. So in your dissertation, you address how interactional technology ethics can be informed by psychology.
Yes.
And we'll be diving into a few of these areas of futuristic technology. But firstly, can you explain what interactional systems are?
Yes. So interactional systems, as I define them, is interactional tech and interactive tech. So interactional tech would be interactional environments, video games, immersive realities, anything that you can plunge into and you do something and it reacts to you, right? And then you have the interactive technology, interactional, sorry, technology, which would be your LLMs, for instance. If you speak to ChatGPT, it has a purpose of having a conversation with you. If you've ever seen a very zoomorphic, so animal-like social robot, it doesn't speak to you, but it will interact with you one way or another. So it goes from your avatar, so screen-based avatar that are powered by AI meant to interact with you, as far as your very embodied social robot that has full-on conversations and can help hopefully with some stuff.
Is there a continuum between these two, or are they kind of one or the other at this point in time?
So they go together also because AI is integrating kind of everything now, also the environments. So now we have, if you think about Red Dead Redemption, is it in the third? No, in the second. In the second, they integrated AI in the environment of the game so that, for instance, if you shoot stuff, and then by chance you shoot a bird, if you go in the next village, they will talk about the bird that you shot in the village before. So and Zelda, also Breath of the Wild, was a fantastic integration of AI where you have problems like you have to cross a river, but you can find any way to do it. And some people put balloons on a small boat and flew across the river, and that worked, because AI was able to make it happen. So this is already very interactional in a way, right? Because you're offering something and the environment is answering. So I would say now this is definitely a spectrum, and now you have your non-playable characters in games or in virtual environments that are AI generated, AI powered. You can have even just a chatbot now with LLMs that are becoming more of a thing. it can become much more integrated as a very interactional thing. So yeah, and it goes as far as physical robots.
It's kind of slightly mind-blowing,
It
but
is super cool.
super cool, super cool. Okay, so starting with immersive realities, which is kind of what you're talking about with the gaming environment, you co-lead an immersive realities working group. Can you talk
Yes.
about more about the lab where you work and what you do and how you're turning this research into products?
Yeah. So first the lab. So this is done, this lab lives at the think tank. So at the tomb, we're having a bunch of different structures, and one of them is the tomb think tank. In this think tank, we have a bunch of labs, and one of them is ours, the Immersive Realities Working Group One. I joined it not at the very beginning, so I'm a bit unsure who was supposed to lead it initially, but we ended up being a team of four now leading it, and with over 20 researchers, 25 researchers, and private, public sector, a very diverse bunch of people in there with a lot of opinions, which is what we want. And I guess our objective for the working group is really to foster those relationships and to get stuff out of it in a positive way. So whether it's projects or else. So what we have right now, for instance, is that we did a hackathon, and next to the hackathon, we did a thinkathon. So that was fun. The hackathon got students in, and the challenge givers were people from different organization, nonprofit organization, policy organizations, policymakers as well, companies, and academics and civil society. So we had like everyone sitting down, figuring out challenges, and our students took them and offered solutions, which was a first fantastic thing to see. And on the other side, those challenge givers, we made busy and we used their time over the weekend to make them answer questions about those challenges that they identified. How do we come together and we find solutions? And we actually have outputs that will come out soon about this that will be informing policy, informing research, informing industry. So hopefully our hackathon meets all of our expectation, which is our students are doing good and they're learning and they're getting good network. And on the other side, we can actually inform people that might need for everyone to sit down and discuss, which doesn't happen so often. And on the other side, we also have research projects, and that's maybe more where the product side comes in. I'm thinking about the big one we have is called the Demystify. It's a project that started a year ago about demystifying AI for people. And we decided to do it in immersive realities, so in VR, and to have an AI agent in it. So we have an unplayable character called Marvin. There's a little robot, very cute, that is AI powered, that helps you go through different puzzles in the environment to learn how LLMs work. That is 18, no, how is it? Yeah, probably 15 to 18 researchers from probably 10 to 15 different backgrounds that came together and just decided to discuss it. We have students working on it. We have ourselves. We have professors having opinions. We have, just everyone making it work, which is super cool. And this game has now a first part that is working that we demoed at the hackathon. And we will expand it. We're getting into the user testing now. We're having 4 puzzles. It's going to be probably 15 minutes of experience. And now we're going to check if what we did actually helps people learn, but probably it does. Hopefully, based on research, it does. So,
So is this research going to be released into academic journals or is it
so there's already one article that was submitted to a conference by the technical side of this research. And we hope to do more. So academic outputs, of course, will be a thing because we're academics, right? That's part of the DNA thing. You just write a paper about it. But we would want this to be used broadly. So, for instance, in universities and museums, where it can access people that might not have the digital literacy that our students have, because of course, going to our 25 years old students that know very well what an LLM is and telling them, I'm going to teach you at the technical university what an LLM is. I'm very unsure that this is the right population. But if we get into national museums, then you're reaching the biggest of population, the people that really need it, which in Germany would be 35 to 50 years old people, or 60 years old, which are still in the workforce, but haven't grown up with this, right? They haven't had this. And we need to help them a little bit because they will, I mean, now AI is everywhere, right? So
It's kind of AI literacy, isn't it, really, for
it
the
is.
older generations who haven't, as you say, grown up with gaming and don't understand what AI can or can't do and are kind of scared by it.
Yeah, and that, like I'm thinking about people like my parents, they're very tech savvy for their age. I'm not going to disclose their age, but I'd say they're close to retirement. So, so they called me. They call me, they ask me stuff. They're like, "Hey, I've read about this thing," and they keep very on their toes. But this is not the norm. This is a lot of cognitive effort to keep up with everything that's happening. Now, every second week, we're having a new thing, right? So how do you keep up with that and have your normal life and your normal responsibilities and your normal cognitive load? So yeah, we're just trying to gamify this thing, make it happier, a bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. That's amazing. So when will the first product really be available, do you think, for the
We're
general public?
next year.
Okay, at some point.
Yeah, we're actually with the user testing, we'll probably have already a public demo of it because we will want to get data. And then I'm assuming by next winter, we should be good to have something. We don't know yet if we're going to make it. We don't want to sell it per se. So, but companies are interested. So we're trying to figure out how to make all of that work. Also, as researchers, how do we fund the next steps of this research? Because we've done that as a hobby. That's cool. But, researchers got to leave as well. So how do we, if this works, how do we make it a thing that can fund the research back and help the group? So
Yeah. And it's what language is it available in, or will it be available?
Uh, English as a starting point, but because the LLM is for now it's Llama, I think that we're using, or GPT. Uh, we're thinking of using Llama, so we're using GPT for now. We can switch it. It's not hard to switch it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that.
We have videos of the demo, and if you come to one of our events, you can test it because now we put it out at every event.
Right, I'm coming to one of your events.
Yay, do it. In March, we're having a big one. Just
Oh,
to
brilliant. Right. It's in my diary. So going on to social robotics, you've done some research into social robotics and healthcare as a use case. So
yeah.
how does AI kind of powered social robotics being integrated into healthcare help care for those who really need additional help in daily life? And also, as part of that, what type of ethical considerations do we need to take into account in the process of developing care type robotics for patients who are particularly vulnerable?
It's a very good question. The answer, I'm trying to make it not too long of an answer. And so to first the how, so there's quite a few robots that are out there already or that are being tested to help people in aging, basically. That's usually what the target group is, aging and autism. This would be your two big target groups. For aging, well, I think what works the best for now would be for anxiety. So there's one social robot that I love so much. It's called Pero. It's a white baby seal. It's very well known, and it reacts to haptic feedback. So we actually you touch it, and it reacts to touch, and it's just a pet. So it's just here to be cute, and it's nice. And but this actually works very well with aging patients and with dementia patients. Um, and this is not maybe the biggest help, but it is for people that live in a home and yeah, for people that work in an aging home, that's actually very helpful. It's like animal therapy without the downsides of having animals in a hospital. So this is kind of your entry point of social robotics in care. And it goes further because now we're looking at how social robots can help further with the interaction, maybe help people take their medication on time organizationally, maybe help them to stay at home instead of going in elderly houses. So how do we help people keep their autonomy? Can robots maybe help also if someone falls and you have a social robot at home? Maybe they're able to identify it faster and to help you either come up or call the people to help you. So there's a lot of small things, very reasonable things that we assume robot would be able to do quite fast. So not like super technical stuff. Um, and then we're going into the future now, into having those robots help carry people, for instance, like really carry them, help in hospitals. And we've seen that during COVID. There has been a lot of robots integrated in a lot of countries. I'm thinking of Rwanda, that became very techy. At that time, they had robots in the airports, they had robots in the hospitals, so that the doctors didn't have to directly interact with the patients and the robot was just the vessel of interaction, but that worked very well. So all these kind of things where robots can definitely be a part of what's happening in a hospital, in a medical house, or at home with people that might be losing autonomy. But also for anxiety management and for the autism spectrum kids, what we see is mostly help them interact, help them learn to interact in a very controlled way, which is good for them because it's less stressful. And now there is even the Now robot, I think, that they coded to help the kid know when to refer to an adult. So actually help them interact with humans. And this is exactly, as a psychologist in AI ethics, that's exactly what I would say. That's what we need robots for. Make those robots help people interact with each other or know how to reach for help.
Where do you think the future is in kind of robotics in the area of care? Do you think that more robots will be used in healthcare systems to mitigate the growing demand for care services and the kind of almost the care services not keeping up with the growing demand?
So I think that is a very cultural question. There are places where I can tell you, oh, for sure, like Japan is already trying it. They have a very aging population. They're a techie nation. They believe in souls for objects. They come from a very different cultural background. For them, it is so animism. Sorry, that's the term. So coming from animism, this is a bit more easy for them to do that transition. And also, they're just struggling much more than anyone else at this specific stage in time. But when we look at Japan, we look at our future as well. So what they're doing is sandboxing for the rest of us, really. Now, if you look into, and that's where the psych in ethics makes sense, is that ethics is the value. It's what you would like this to be based on societal values. So define those societal values, but also what actually makes sense for your population, right? So in the West, and I'm thinking specifically about research that look at Germany, here robots are tools. They are not things. They're not entities. They are accepted better if they are tools, objects that have a purpose. Um, so you can make them a bit social, but you might make people uncomfortable and therefore they might not use them. But if you go to the US, you would actually have another perception where they're much more into this warmth when it comes to robots. So if you look at warmth versus competency, right? I'm making a figure with my hands, but you know what I mean. You would expect more warmth when you're from US background when it comes to robots. So the robot needs to say hi and be a bit more engaging. Um, Not to say the Germans don't like engaging robots, but they would prefer competent robots. And then if you go to Asian countries, Eastern Asian countries, particularly coming from animism, they have a very different perspective where they would treat a robot not as a human, but more as an entity. This is an entity. So very different spectrum. So when it comes to applying that in care, very much depends on that spectrum as well. I wouldn't expect a robot here in Germany to be integrated with a very warm personality, meant to, have a very good relationship with people, asking, how was your day today? Oh, I'm not sure that would work. Also, Germans are very private. And when we talk about ethics, we can talk about privacy issues that you might not have in the US or Eastern Asia. So yeah, a lot of things to consider.
So, in general, you looked at the ethical design for social robots from a psychological perspective. What are your main takeaways from this?
That's a very good question. I would say safeguards. That's the main thing that came up for me. We did a research with Bethany Thomas, that a super cool cyber psych researcher as well. The paper just got officially accepted this week, so yay on us. You'll see it out very soon. Um, and what came out was really this idea that we know that people are gonna, with robots, have this interaction that turns into a relationship. I mean, I have a relationship with my violin and I have a relationship with my car. You know what I mean? We have objects that do not need to interact in a reasonable way with us, but we still get attached to them. And this will happen, I mean, with the Tamagotchi effect, right? You know, like a Furby. I don't know if you remember the Furbies, and that wasn't with AI in it. So if we're being reasonable, we know that we're going to develop those relationships and those attachments. And that is great. I do not think this is an issue unless we let it become an issue. But we still need to have safeguards, especially for vulnerable populations. So that means small children, people with mental disabilities, people with dementia, you know, people that might not be able to understand that this is not a living object, but this is really a tool or an object, and keep that distance happening. Also, I do not personally, and based on what I just said, but I do not believe that we should have very emotional robots that would be able to play on the sensitive chord. This robots that do emotional recognition is a thing. They're not very good at this stage, regardless of what people say, because they're based on an outdated emotion theory. So good for us. They're not actually that good. But they have reactions that might actually trigger answers in us that might not be reasonable when we talk about a tool, because they are not living, they're not pets, right? So I would want to keep those safeguards around emotionality, around over reliance as well, overselling what your robot can do. No, don't oversell that. If your robot is just meant to be cute and move around, do it. Say this is the purpose of the robot. And I'm telling you, this might work even better than if you say, my robot is going to be like the pet you never had and better because it's going to adapt to your personality. Don't. I don't want a robot that adapts to my personality. Thank you very much. That's just weird, you know? So I'm thinking about one specific robot right now, the Lovat. If anyone wants to look it up, it's the cutest robot. I just spent some time in Japan with this robot and I can't get over it. Its purpose is literally to be a love robot. So it moves around. It's like a little animal. It's inspired by penguin design. And it's just, it doesn't speak. It just moans a little bit. It has little sounds, you know, it's like, mama. And it just flaps its ears and it looks at you. It recognizes you. And then it's just happy to see you. The end. And this works. This is enough. I'm telling you, you don't need more. So yes, I would say safeguards, transparency, and making sure that we're not impeding on human dignity and autonomy. So that's why we need to give all the infos, be very clear. And of course, data, but that's maybe a more technical question, but consent, proper enlightened consent needs transparency. So just keeping that in the loop as well.
Okay, sticking with ethics, but moving on to AI ethics. Over the past few years, you've been involved in the Institute for Ethics in AI, and we've been
Yes.
hearing quite a lot about ethics of AI. But what would you say are the main ethical concerns about artificial intelligence?
The expectations. So that's a very human scientist answer to it, but what human thinks AI can do. I wouldn't be too afraid of AI in itself because working with technical people and using AI also in our research, in our developments. I don't code AI myself, but I understand how it works. I understand, at least I hope I do. I mean, they try very hard to explain it to me. And so understanding a little bit where we're at with this, I would say what the media, the portrayal of AI, what also the big tech guys sometimes say, like for any psychologist listening, one of the Google head guys said, AI has 1,000 IQ. I'm like, I'm sorry, this would be a very disabled person if it was a person. Like we did that. Is that really something? Can we even score 1,000 on the device? I don't know. This sounds a lot. But this is the kind of stuff that is being advertised that AI is going to be more intelligent than humans, and would love to have one psychologist come in from differential psych and tell me what intelligence is as well. Would love that so that we can actually compare stuff. But the discourse around it, I think, is for me the biggest ethical challenge, because that's what brings up a different expectation that is not realistic and therefore fears, but also ways to use it that are not realistic. When someone uses ChatGPT to create content, informative content, this is a problem. This is not what a model for large language, no, an LLM, large language model, is supposed to do. It's not meant to give you information. It's meant to use words. So this is the kind of things where I would say the biggest issue for me is in the way we expect AI to be due to the way AI is portrayed. And then, of course, that links to transparency and understandability of what AI is. So fixing the world with literacy, right? That would be the end of it. But big problem. We're developing a super cool VR experience if you want to help with that. But, you know.
Yes. So we're
Sure.
going to look, so kind of diving into those two areas. So where media is and where tech is, and both we're getting communication from both of them, and just want to explore each of them in turn. So there's been quite a lot of hype in the media about AI displacing creative and knowledge workers' jobs. So those are people in the office who use their head to get their work done and make money. So
Sure.
how much of an issue do you think this is in terms of AI displacing jobs? Or is there a possibility that AI is more likely to increase productivity and even out the disparity of certain skill sets, so make it easier for some people to be more creative who don't necessarily have that innate ability, so to speak?
Yes to both. So I would say the problem is not AI doing something. It's the way we use AI, first of all. Now, if your job can be done by AI at this stage and you're not a statistician, then is your job really a real job? And even statisticians, they need to think real hard where AI is kind of missing point. So I would say at this stage, you can evolve jobs, can make them different. But if you're asking me, will AI replace journalism? I hope not, because criticality is not an AI skill. Now, can AI help write faster? Yes, it can. So for me, I wouldn't say that AI is the problem in itself. It's the way we use it. And again, that links back to what I was saying about perception. If we perceive it for what it is, which is a tool, then we make it an assistant to human work. And you were talking about creativity as well. And I think this is a fantastic tool for accessing new ways to be creative. I mean, video games is art, Like a digital environment is art, the same way painting is art. A narrative is art. So why wouldn't AI art be art as well, learning to use AI as a tool for art, And at the same time, just I don't paint. I cannot draw for my life. I am a very bad drawer. I'm a good musician, very bad drawer. We can't have it all. But now I want to have cool pictures for my projects, and I want to have cool like illustration type figures because I like it more than pictures. I do go on DALL-E and have it create the illustration that I'm not able to draw, but I know what I'm looking for. This is again one anecdote, but I'm not the only one. So this is just an illustration of how AI can make things accessible. So I think the way we use it is going to define if it becomes a problem or not the tech in itself, not about this at least.
Yeah. And at the moment, there's only so much the AI, with whatever type of AI it is, can actually do. So creating marketing material, for example, it's not all that good at the moment. It can give you some
Uh,
suggestions, but I've been trying to get it to do a brochure for me, and it doesn't even come close to
nah.
creating anything that's useful. So there's still a lot of opportunity for creators unless it becomes so dynamic that it's able to kind of take a brand like a creative would, take a brand or take some ideas and build something that is actually useful and kind of translates that into something that someone's looking for from a marketing perspective, for example.
Right, but you would still do human prompting to
Yeah,
know exactly where to go with that while you're going. So in AI governance and AI ethics, we have this notion of AI in the loop, AI on the loop, and AI out, human in the loop, human on the loop, and human outside of the loop. And the question is, where do you put the human for what? And I would say, honestly, let's just keep the human at least on the loop, if not in the loop. And this is the only way to have the best output possible in those specific contexts. There are other areas where I'd say if we can remove the humans, remove the humans. But for this, I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity to have just creativity heightened with more tools
yeah,
and more help.
exactly. So it's a help, it's a tool. It's not going to necessarily be the thing at this point.
I don't think so. You know, computers didn't stop us from handwriting. So
Exactly. And movies didn't stop us from reading.
exactly.
So going back then to the tech giants, because there's they're concerned about the possibility, or some are concerned about the possibility becoming so clever that they become almost sentient. So having emotions and feelings and the ability to reason and potentially taking over tasks from humanity and making human extinct, kind of Matrix style stuff. Do you think, or are you concerned about this, or do you think AI will only ever be a series of very clever mathematical algorithms that help us optimize our work and our lives?
That's a very good question. I think that those are actually two separate questions. So if you ask me if I think AI can do more than what it does right now and can potentially be better at being autonomous and things, quantum is happening, right? I don't know when, I don't know how, but we have a working group on that at the think tank. If you're interested, you can look them up. They do fantastic work. Um, and I think that yes, once we have quantic in there and we can code not in binary, but with four different numbers, we will be able to do more crazy stuff. And yeah, for sure, we'll go further. Does that lead to sentience though? And to the end of humanity and to a new type of life? I'm not a philosopher. This is not for me. This is not the way I think about things. My personal opinion is no, because there is something we keep forgetting with our human exceptionalism is that we're animals. So I would like to, put that church back in the center of the village. That's a French expression where we say we put the church back at the center of the village and say, yeah, we're animals and we're creating something that is non-animal. First, why would we want it to be like us? Because we already exist. And I mean, we're cool, but we're not that great. So maybe not redoing it is a good idea. We're already there. But also it won't have all those little things that we have. We just, I remember when we started talking about the mirror neurons, you know, and I was like already studying psychology and I'm turning 30 in January. This was not long ago, you know, and I'm like now we don't know so much. Of course, we have all those new fMRIs that are super cool that now we get to see in layers. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. It's super awesome. You can see everything now. But we're so far from understanding everything of how we interact with each other. We keep forgetting that we're animals in the public discourse, at least. I'm sure people that research this area don't. We have hormones. That's how we interact as well. A lot of our communication is nonverbal, non-gestural. It's through what we exert. So, and sociability is part of intelligence. I think everyone agrees on that. I hope. So I think it's very hard to talk about AI becoming sentient when we don't even know what it means for humans. We don't even know how it works for us or for animals. Is an animal sentient? you
Yeah.
know, that let's first answer this question. But that's a philosopher's question, not a
Yeah.
psychologist question, maybe.
Yeah, but I also think that from a human perspective, that kind of merging technology and biology is I'm very pessimistic about that ability to do so, and kind of the technology to read biological signals. For me, that doesn't make sense from a, as you say, we're kind of animals, and that this is not animal
Yeah.
stuff. And I know we get transplants and all those other things that
Yeah.
help us with our biology, but I can't imagine that those two elements actually talk to each other or able to. I'm kind of quite pessimistic about that perspective.
Yeah, same. And it's why. Also, that's always the question. Maybe I'm a bit too down to earth and I should be a bit more outside of the scope, but why would we even want to do it? We have an opportunity here to make an answers for ourselves. We have an opportunity, we've seen that AI that can read brain waves and can make music, but it's not just that it can make music. It is that this can help people with a very strong disability be back into communication. This can bring people back to community, to interaction, which is one of the needs as a human, right? This is what we want to look at. We're seeing like AI that's able to do more or being used to do more and more crazy stuff. Let's first help the humans we have now. And I'm sure some people want to create a Frankenstein type situation with AI, but I personally don't believe very strongly in it. I don't believe it will work so well. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe call me back 30 years from now and tell me I was wrong. I'll be okay with it. But yeah, I think at least that's not where I would like for us to go. That makes sense.
It does make sense. I'm with you on that one, definitely. So, and they're just talking about the kind of bad side of things. There are some recent reports on how bad actors are using AI to improve kind of their malicious or corrupt cyber operations. Do you think work on AI ethics will help to clamp down on these dark web operations, or will AI ethics only really apply to kind of the general population and their daily work and lives?
So AI ethics in itself is a big umbrella word that is also not very practical. I might not make friends by saying that, but I wouldn't say that AI ethics is a field that fixes problems. I think it's a field that is meant to inform how to potentially fix problems, right? So, as a psychologist, I don't often define myself as an AI ethicist. I rather say I am a psychologist and I do AI ethics because I think from a psychology perspective, we're much more into the and so what type of situation. And in this case, I would say that's when we need psychologists to come in and anthropologists and a lot of other human and social scientists that have a more down on earth, ground proof, ground truth type of approach. Because, yes, within the big realm of AI ethics, we could try to find solutions to this to make this a bit less worst. Also, we know, I'm just going to throw names again, but Nicola Fox Hamilton, for instance, worked on those topics of cybercriminality, etc. Those are things that as cyberpsych we can look into and we can inform also on the AI side how the AI, which patterns should the AI recognize or which patterns should the AI have to counter. So we have a lot to inform the tech people in there to fix those issues if we can. Yeah.
So, Oxane, we're coming to the end of our podcast, and I normally ask my guests three standard questions. And the first is, what is the most important question I haven't asked you yet?
What's the purpose of all of this, right? Why?
Yeah.
Just why? Why I do what I do. And I think that's a question I like to ask everyone when they tell me about their job. I'm like, why do you do it? What's your motivation? It can be money, it can be status, or it can be fun, or it can be all of it, right? Um, and so if can I answer that question?
Yes, please do.
So why I think first the fun. If I'm being very honest, I think my work is awesome. I play with robots and games and immersive worlds and a lot of super cool people from all over the world. I discover fantastic cultures and places and just it's so exciting all the time. I rarely am bored, and I'm a person that get bored very fast. So zero boredom in my job. Um, and also I do love being an academic. So I love being with my students. I love learning things from others all the time. I love teaching. I love learning from my students' experiences as well because they come from a very diverse background every time. I'm in a very international university. I'm super lucky to do all this stuff, to have all the opportunities. I was telling you, I was in Japan last week. This is crazy. This is, if you had told me 10 years ago, I'd be in Japan just like that because we wanted to do a conference on social robots and I would hang out with robots. A dream, the dream. And I do actually believe that there is a world in which we can change people's life. And sometimes it's my students' life that hopefully I help them get a bit more confident. And this will help them as grown-ups to be better in their own skin. I can also give skills to people that will be important. They will make decisions that will impact a lot of others people's lives with their products. So if we can teach them to do it in a way that might be better for others, then we're just winning. And sometimes it's just developing some, like I was saying, this video game that we have in immersive realities that if it helps one person learn a bit more about AI and feel more comfortable in their job, then yes, let's do it. If we help one company develop a tech that's a bit more aligned with what people want, but also what people need to feel better, let's do it. So yeah, that's the general why.
That's very cool.
It's fun. We're
It's
having a lot of
fun.
fun.
Oh, wow. Not many people can say that about their job. What a joy
Yeah.
to love what you do.
I know. We're very lucky. We also have those hardcore deadlines, and we also hate ourselves sometimes for the schedules we have, right? And all the projects that we said yes to that we don't have the time. But it's most of it is still awesome, and also being at the
Fun.
with all the changes that happens always very exciting, and yeah.
It's a great career to be in at this point in history. To be part of this is just super fun.
Yeah, we can help people a little bit, just make that game a little bit better, that robot a little bit more social.
And people's lives a little bit better.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So there's often a frustration among cyber psychologists around media misinformation, especially when journalists take a smidgen of academic findings and twist it to be more about clickbaity or change a negative social narrative or create a media moral panic. Do you think journalists are getting better or worse at accurately representing sound academic findings?
Hmm. My in my very short experience, right? I literally just submitted my PhD like a month ago. So thank you. But very short-lived experience. Um, I would say it depends which journalist we're talking about. Depends which source you're talking about. I think we all build, especially as academics, I would hope that we have this criticality to find the source that we know we can trust. They will at least have a bit of criticality themselves. Now, if you talk about the general media, a big part of it is that they still don't understand it themselves, right? So they will actually advertise what they think they're advertising. They're going to do it in good faith, which is even worse. So like educate yourself before you try to educate other people. But so not better, not worse, just moral panic all over again. Video games make people violent kind of level of stuff. I think we're still fighting this misconception very hard with research and with experts talking a lot about it. So yeah, not better, not worse.
Yeah, I think that you're right. And I think a lot of people just kind of Google video games and violent does video games make people violent and they just
Yeah.
kind of go off what someone else is saying. So rather than actually diving deeply into the research and taking the time to ask people, and it can create that moral panic or exacerbate it.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, I don't question how my baker does their bread. I'm just like, this bread's going to be awesome. them, and that's all I know, and that's all I need to know. So I think maybe there is a part of it that is, as academics, we need to do a better job. We're very good at teaching in school. We're very good at doing our job on our side of the street, but maybe we need to be a bit more all over the street, all over the town. We need to, you're doing a fantastic job by having a popularization, sorry, I know we can't say that in English. Vulgarization is a French word. Popularization podcast where we talk about those things and we can explain them. We need to go more in schools. We need to go more in museums. I keep referring to museums because we have a super cool museum here that does a lot of those outreach activities. Um, we need to just be better at explaining it to people because we cannot be mad at people for not taking the time to learn. It's not their job. They have other jobs. They're busy as well. But it's our job to educate everyone. And so our job to do it better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point. It is our job as academics and those who know something to actually get it out there and make it happen and educate as nicely as we possibly can without it being too academic, but just kind of help.
Make games with us. And that's the best way we figured it out for us. We're like, not all of us are good at speaking in public. Not all of us are good at making it easy because we think it's easy. That doesn't mean it is, because
Yeah,
it's our job. Of course, we think it's easy. Hopefully, the basics we got, right? So it's an effort, I think, that we all need to do. And I would say, in a way, the new generation with all the social media, with all of this everyday outreach that we've been raised in, and especially the younger ones, because in social media was not always part of my life. I'm not that young. I think they might have this a bit differently. I hope that they have this a bit better than we did.
yeah, I hope so too. I think, yeah, I think they probably do.
Mm,
And lastly, Oxane, do you have any particular favorite cyber psychology related book that you normally recommend to others? Because you mentioned one earlier on the conversation.
yes.
What is those books that you normally recommend to other people to read?
So the first one is The New Breed by Kate Darling. So that's the one that I mentioned before. If you like social robot stuff and you want to know a bit more about our relationship to them, Kate Darling was one of the first researcher, if not the first researcher, to look at empathy for social robots a while back. And she's from law. She's super cool. She wrote I mean, this book is super entertaining on top of it, full of anecdotes, very easy to read. I'm looking at the pile of books I have here, and I would say Reality is Broken is another one that I love. I'm sure you've heard about it before, by Jane McGonigal. A fantastic book about video games and about a lot of other things that I won't go into too much detail. I don't want to spoil anyone, but Reality is Broken is an awesome one as well. And otherwise, I'd like to recommend video game if I can. So, talking about immersive realities and kind of the point of immersive realities and immersiveness, you do not need a VR headset, but go play What Remains of Edith Finch. It is on the PS Store for if you have the subscription for free. I'm sure that you can find it on PC, on a lot of different screen level. So it's a game. I would even call it an immersive experience rather than a game. That makes you go through so many emotions, so many worlds in only like 6 to 7 hours. So also very good time-wise. You can finish it. I finished it. I'm bad at finishing games. Um, yeah, definitely the three I would recommend. And of course, Detroit Become Human. But that's just one of my personal favorite, because you play robots and it's cool and it actually makes you think about your relationship to tech.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Jeepers, we're talking at the beginning of the podcast about how many books you've got around us. And it's
Yeah.
take out a small mortgage to keep up with all the books that people are recommending to me, and I'm desperate to read them all. Roxanne, thank you so much for joining me on Confessions of a Cyber Psychologist. It was so fabulous to catch up with you, and thank you for all your wisdom that you shared and the insights that you shared. And I hope we get to chat again in the future.
Yes, thank you so much for your time, and can't wait to listen to all the other podcasts you do.